Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. It is Jeremy Werner, Illini Inquirer publisher, here with you. And we got a full show for you today. Kyle Tausk is going to join me to give his thoughts on Illinois basketball's offseason, what he thinks he did well, his lingering concerns. We'll talk about some NBA draft decisions or draft stock for some of the players as well. We'll dive into everything Illinois basketball offseason with Kyle Tausk here coming up. We're also going to chat with Mike Small, Illini golf coach. The postseason is here. We haven't had a lot of time to think about and talk about the spring sports here. Of course, Illinois golf, always a national contender. Talk to Mike a little bit about what it was like for him to see the basketball team on that stage. His dad was a great basketball player at Illinois a while back, and just kind of some parallels between the two teams, especially with their overseas recruiting. But then we dive into his team, which is currently ranked number 12 in the country heading into the Big Ten championships. They're the favorite there, but haven't won it in a couple years. So looking to get that trophy back. And then I'll talk to him about what he thinks about his team going into NCAA postseason play as well. So a fun show. Love always talking to Mike Small. He's one of the best, obviously, at what he does in the country. And Kyle Tausk will get all of your Illini basketball conversation in with him. But before we dive into that, I want to tell you guys, it is grilling season right now, and that's where Omaha Steaks come in. I got my Blackstone grill. I've been really obsessed here recently with Chipotle burgers. You know, you get those jalapenos cut up, you put a little bit of that hot sauce in with some mayo and make a great burger, but the meat is the most important ingredient there. And that's why you need to go to Omaha Steaks and get their Burger Perfection Pack. It's an incredible deal for just $99.99. Mouth-watering burgers from Omaha Steaks. You get an exclusive package in this $99.99 deal that includes 20 of Omaha Steaks' great steak burgers. That's 4 of each of their finest burgers, pure ground filet mignon. I tried their New York strip the other night. It was a great Chipotle burger, ribeye. Me and my wife had the brisket burgers here recently and the sirloin. They're only available at omahasteaks.com. These mouthwatering burgers have an incredible texture that feels homemade, and they're a bun-busting 6 ounces, so they're guaranteed to satisfy. Plus, you get an additional 8 free Wagyu smash burgers with the pack. That's 28 burgers total for just $99.99. The smash burgers, easy to grill up, guys. They don't crumble on the grill. They're 100% flippable, and they're delicious. Get that great char on them on the grill. So get ready for grilling season with the mouth-watering Omaha Steaks Burger Perfection Pack, plus 8 free Wagyu smash burgers for just $99.99. Go to omahasteaks.com, and as a bonus, use promo code Illini to get $35 off your order. That's $35 off with promo code Illini. Terms apply. See site for details. All right, let's bring in our guy, Kyle Tausk. Let's talk a little Illinois basketball offseason. Kyle, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm so close with school and getting close to graduation. I'm getting there, but still grinding it. And it's been quiet on the basketball front in late April, which isn't very normal. So I've used it to catch up on some other things, but I'm excited to talk some hoops.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. Illinois basketball giving us at least a start of May here. That can be a little quiet so we can recharge a little bit. But we will break down the offseason. Get a lot of your thoughts, Kyle, on the offseason so far. Just maybe some superlatives here we can go through. But we will hit on the NCAA news that came out yesterday with the NCAA tournament expansion coming. But let's not get angry yet. Let's talk a little concern meter. Can we do this? Because there's always concerns out there, even if you have a top 5, top 10 team, and you got just a program that's humming right now. Andrei Stojakovic declares for the NBA draft. If I would have told you that going into the offseason, I don't think it would have been a surprise. But coming a week after he announces he's going to return to Illinois, a little interesting, Kyle. So what's your concern meter? 1 through 10, 1 not concerned, 10, oh my gosh, this is a disaster for Illinois. What's your concern meter about Andrei Stojakovic declaring for the draft?
2. It's not very high. I think it makes a ton of sense for him to do this. Like, to your point, I think going into the offseason, I wouldn't have even thought maybe he was the only guy other than Keaton Wagler to do this. Like, I thought maybe it would make sense for Tomislav and Zvonimir to declare for the draft as well, just because doesn't hurt you. I think for a guy like Andrei Stojakovic, who clearly has dreams to be an NBA player and wants to be one, to get that feedback, to go through the process, see what it's like, talk with NBA teams, maybe get an invite to the combine, and then use that then to during your senior season to see exactly what you need to work on and use that feedback to then elevate yourself into a draft pick the next year. I think it makes a ton of sense for guys that are allowed to do this. Like you look even across the Big Ten, like Elliot Kiddo's doing this, Jeremy Fears is doing this. I think both those guys pretty comfortable that they're going to be coming back to college, but why not get the feedback and go through the process? Now, I think Andre might be a little bit better prospect than both those guys, but I still think you look at what this looks like right now. You look at ESPN as Andre at 57th. Like there's way more money to be made.
Podcast I did, by the way, it was like 94th.
Yeah,
but a lot of guys have returned to school.
Everyone's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are coming back to school because there's a lot of money to be had by coming back to school. So, listen, I think Andre could be drafted in the back half of the second round if he decided to go. But the 54th pick in the draft last year signed a two-way deal that is an unguaranteed $600,000. If you are, say he creeps up because more guys stay in the draft or leave the draft and stay in college, say he's the 43rd pick, you can get a guaranteed deal worth about $1.5 million a year. He can make 2-3 times that at Illinois. So to me, it just doesn't make sense. But of course, when you declare, there's a non-zero chance. He's a good player. He's got a chance to play in the NBA. But I'm with you. I'm at a 2. I don't think he goes through all these announcements. I think he's like Elliot Cadeau and Jeremy Fears Jr., like you said. It just makes too much financial sense for him to come back to college.
That's the thing, too, is him making the announcement and the video, and you're not doing that if you have goals of being the 54th pick and think, hey, yeah, this is an option for me. I think this is more procedural for Andre and a guy that has this option. Why not take advantage of it? The only reason it's not a 1 is because, yeah, to your point, instead of it being 100% that he's coming back to Illinois, which it would have been if he didn't enter the draft, now there's the other option there. So it's 5%, right? But I still think when you get down to it and once Andre goes through this process, we saw it last year, there's still some things for him to be a true NBA prospect. There's still growth that has to happen there for a guy that hasn't shot it very well like him, and a guy that has some limitations with the ball in his hands just from making others better and playmaking. And, I think there's another gear he can reach from a defensive standpoint. That's a late second round guy right now, especially in this class. I think next year could be a late first round guy. And that's where it's okay, I can make more money next year in college and I can elevate myself in a weaker class and cash in even more at the NBA level. I think barring some huge surprise, I would imagine that everything points towards Andre coming back. I'm not very concerned about it at all.
All right, Stfan Vox not announced yet, which is interesting. It took David Mirkovic a month after committing to not get announced. I'll start this one. I'm at a 1 here. Just diving around, asking around. There are no concerns from Illinois' perspective. It just sounds like this is, again, procedural, and that Illinois fully expects Stfan Vox to be part of this team. Sounds like it'll happen sooner than later that he will sign with Illinois. And listen, this makes so much sense from Stfan Vox's perspective, right? What a situation for a guy who's so talented, great positional size, a great scorer, great shooter, to be on a team that just elevates his skill set and has used a skill set like his so well. We can talk about Quinton Coleman kind of fitting what Keaton Wagler did. No, Stfan Vox is the Keaton Wagler quote unquote replacement, is the high usage kind of go-to guy. This makes so much sense for him with all this spacing he will get, Kyle. I have no concerns about Stfan Vox, getting with Illinois. Now, it hasn't happened yet, so it is worth saying that, but just everything I've asked or everything I've kind of gathered about this, there's a little concern from Illinois' perspective.
Yeah, I'd be at a 2 for that one too. The only reason it's not a 1 is because it hasn't been announced yet. It's until you actually get that signature and you get that thing locked and loaded. I think, it's fair to have slight concern just because it's taking so long and it's maybe a little bit unusual compared to a lot of the other transfers in the country, in the rest of college basketball. Yes, Stfan Vox is a guy who played overseas, but it's also He's also a guy that played college basketball last year as a traditional transfer. It's not quite the same as, trying to work out all the different things with an overseas prospect. So that's where I think it'd be fair to be like, raise your eyebrow a little bit, like, well, why hasn't it happened yet? But yeah, I think until we hear something that makes us have any concern or any reason to really believe that it's not going to happen, there shouldn't be any, and it doesn't sound like that. So I would imagine that at some point in the pretty near future, hopefully you can get some conclusion on that. And yeah, to everything you said, I mean, the more I watch Stfan Vox and really dive into him and comb through some of that Providence stuff last year, like getting higher and higher and higher about plug him into this Illinois offense with the guys around him, give him even more freedom with the ball in his hands, plug him into that Quinton Coleman role. I think he could be really, really good next year. And, obviously it was a small transfer class for Illinois because it didn't have to be big. The guy you did get, and we'll get to that even more a little bit later, I think you did pretty well. So I would imagine that hopefully won't take much longer. And that's a huge piece to the offseason.
All right, we'll dive into that here in a little bit. All right, let's just talk a little bit about draft stock. Quinton Coleman recently number 5 on the Athletics. Latest mock draft from Sam Vecini. Jeremy Wu of ESPN had him number 6. Good to see. I mean, Illinois hasn't had a draft pick that high in quite some time. I mean, you got to go back to Darren Williams where they had a top 10 pick here. Then Kylan Boswell, not in the Athletics mock draft, but number 52 in ESPN's mock draft. As we wait for closure on 5 for 5 proposal, I think basketball kind of throws things up in the air, but it sounds like those guys would not be grandfathered in. I'm sure that would be taken to court, but I don't think that would be resolved before Kylan Boswell has to make a decision. All these seniors in this class have to make a decision about whether they want to go pro. So just like you saw with football with Hank Beatty and guys like that, I think Kylan Boswell will be in this draft class. I think he's committed to that. But number 52 in ESPN's mock draft, and as all of these guys have gone back to school, now Kylan Boswell, whether it's getting drafted late, Kyle, or having the chance to get into a camp and earn a two-way, I think he's at least had more of an open path now. I think shooting is the biggest concern with him, but there's a lot of things I think the NBA will like about his two-way ability. So I think he's going to get a chance. It's just, what does that look like, whether it's a draft pick or undrafted free agent?
Yeah, I think for Kylan, there's nobody that's benefited more from, this wave of guys coming back to school and a historically low number of early entries. It was 71 guys that were early entries of the draft. And, there's a good chunk of those guys who are probably going to withdraw, namely Andrei Stojakovic, the guys we talked about in the Big Ten. Like, that's not going to be the number that ultimately enters. So the biggest opportunity then comes for the seniors who probably in a normal year without all the NIL money and 5 years ago probably would not have really had much of a chance to get drafted, and it probably would have been, undrafted free agents, summer league invite, that's kind of the path that you're looking for. Now, the pool of players is going to get a lot smaller once you get past 40, 45, 50 in that draft range. And I think Kylan Boswell's right in that mix. So I think he certainly has a chance to get drafted in the late second round now, especially with the way that this pool looks. And, I think there's some things for sure. I mean, when you look at his defensive ability and just the size and strength too. Like, we know how strong he is. We know how strong his lower body is. He also at the Portsmouth Invitational tested with an above 6'8" wingspan too, at the guard spot. And so he's got the length and the size. And I think defensively, when you project him to the NBA level, that translates right away. And that's a skill that teams are craving. I also think when you look at what Kylan did at the Portsmouth as a playmaker, as a passer, he really helped himself because he was playing true point guard in that thing, and he averaged over 10 assists a game.
Reminds you how much he sacrificed for his team this year, because he's got that in him, but his team didn't need him to do that because it had Quinton Coleman, a lottery pick at that position.
And that's what I think he needs to help his NBA stock, because there's not a lot of 6'2" shooting guards in the NBA anymore. Like, that's just, it's really hard to be that. So Kylan's probably a guy that if he's going to get on an NBA floor is probably going to be kind of a point guard, or a guy that has the ball some, or a guy that can just give you some ball handling and spurts off the bench. And I think that's always been something he's had. So I think he helped himself there at the Portsmouth as well. But I do think the swing for him is going to be, can he shoot it better? Because with his skill set, with his size, the position he's going to play, and the role that he would play in the NBA, you got to be able to make shots, especially catch and shoot threes, playing off of stars, playing a complementary role. You got to make threes. So I think that's the thing. Like as he goes through this pre-draft process, and as he works his way, summer league, whatever it is, he's got to show he can make those shots. That's, I think, going to swing whether he can get a two-way, can find his way on an NBA floor or not.
All right, you ready to get riled up?
Sure.
All right, the news came out yesterday. The NCAA, it's just procedural at this point, just formalities, according to Pete Thamel of ESPN, that the men's and women's basketball tournaments will expand to 76 teams. What they're going to do is basically that first four is going to turn into a first 24 that we're going to have for the NCAA tournament, 12 games before the first round or the opening round of the NCAA tournament. And Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated had what this would look like.
Oh, God.
Your play-ins would have been 16 seeds and 15 seeds. And then you would have 13 Arizona State versus 13 California, 12 Oklahoma State versus 12 Virginia Tech, 12 Indiana versus 12 Oklahoma, 11 Auburn versus 11 San Diego State, 11 SMU versus 11 Miami, Ohio, and number 11 Texas versus 11 NC State, which we saw those last two games last year. So we get more of those games. We get more of these power conference teams that really didn't deserve NCAA tournament bids. So who's asking for this? Well, those power conferences are asking for it. The NCAA wants it, even though they say it's not a huge financial windfall. It is more games. It is more content for them.
TV networks. Yes,
TV networks want this a little bit, but like the reporting that it's not a huge financial windfall, because these games are going to be watched, but it's not going to be like the first round of the NCAA tournament. None of us fans were asking for this. None of us wanted to see more of the mediocre to actually below average power conference teams. If you would have told me, Kyle, that like this got more Illinois States and Bradleys and UICs in, like that would have been okay for me, because it's harder for those teams and those leagues to get two bid leagues, to have a playing game. It's still the NCAA tournament. Like that would have appealed to me a little bit more. No, we're getting more Indianas and Oklahomas and Auburns. Like I have no interest in that, but they're going to do it anyway. And will it impact me greatly? No, because I don't know how locked in on those games I will be, but it's weird that we're going to have that many teams playing games leading into the NCAA tournament. It's
awful. And now when you print out that bracket on Sunday night on Selection Sunday, like half of it's going to be empty because there's 9 trillion playing games, and you don't. It's just
why mess with it?
I know there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've always been somebody who didn't even really care for the 68. Like, let's just go back to 64, never touch it again. 64, perfect. We don't need these playing games. We don't need. I think there was nothing wrong with a 64 team tournament. It's the most perfect format in all of sports, in my opinion. It's the most perfect fan experience in all of sports from a viewership standpoint, and the way that worked. And I think. Not more games is not always a good thing when it's Arizona State versus Virginia Tech or whoever. Like
Oklahoma with 7-11 in the SEC, Kyle. 7-11 in their conference, and it wasn't
there's going to be under 500 teams in general now that make it. I think one of the projections had somebody who was 16-17 last year that was getting in. It's ridiculous, and nobody wants this. And I think. Now, I mean, if you're a high major program here, you almost have to kind of readjust what you consider to be a successful season. Because, like, yes, I get the ultimate goal, especially for teams that, aren't at the top of the sport. Like, it's always been like, hey, make the tournament. That's kind of the barometer. And, of course, the standards are different in different places. But if you're a team now that, you look at just high major basketball, there's 79 high major teams. And now there's going to be 45 at-larges, and probably like 40 of those are going to high major teams, plus the 5 that get so there's 45 high major teams that are going to make tournaments now. And so you can be a clearly below average high major program and make the NCAA tournament. and maybe that saves somebody's job, or maybe that, it just, you have to kind of recalculate, like, okay, what really is a successful season? Because are we just going to celebrate and move forward knowing we were team 75 to get in and lost in the play-in? Like, I just think it's ridiculous, because now you're getting teams that are kind of bad basketball teams that are probably going to make the NCAA tournament. It's going to take away the lore of, like, hey, making the tournament means something. How much is it going to mean now? Just getting there. So I think there's so much wrong with that. I hate it. I expected it to come at some point, just with all the things we've heard, but I'm never going to like it. I will always be team 64, never touch it again, never change anything. 64 team tournament, and let that play out until the world ends.
Yeah, they're boys that feel the 68. Feel the 76 just doesn't sound the same.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Is it going to impact the way I watch Thursday? No. But
no,
I don't see the need for this.
And it's not going to impact Illinois all that much. Although if this was 10 years ago, this would be the best thing ever for Illinois. Oh, my.
Why not 10, 12 years ago? Yeah, that would have been helpful for him. Illinois would have made a few more NCAA tournaments back then. All right, Kyle, let's break down the Illinois offseason. I'm just going to give the floor to you for most of this, because I've given my thoughts. But as we kind of have settled on what Illinois' roster looks like, I don't expect them to add any more. Just kind of waiting on Andrej Stojakovic to, officially announce if he returns or not, which we expect him to. Stfan Vox to be officially announced. But it's a good time to kind of reset and kind of look at this offseason in totality, because it was a quick one. But let's start off with this. Zoom out. What stands out about Illinois' plan to you, about how they approached this offseason?
I just think you had a formula that worked really well last year, and the goal was, let's try and copy and build off that as best we can. Let's try to retain as much as we can from that. Let's try to find the pieces that fit exactly what we want and what made us so successful last season. And I just think it was really that simple. I mean, this wasn't an Illinois program that went into the offseason wanting to, make drastic changes, or wanting to overturn a roster, or wanting to, go out and, do all these splashy things. It was just a pretty simple approach of, like, hey, we're coming off a Final Four, and we have a chance to get a lot back from that, and then supplement it from there with the right fits. I think they accomplished that phenomenally. And I think as you look ahead into next season, it's going to look pretty similar to what it did. And that was a really successful formula. And now you can just continue to improve and build off of that. You got 5 guys back from a team that made the Final Four, that now I think each of those 5 guys can get better and more comfortable and build off of what they did last season. And you can expand some of the things that they do without necessarily, making any drastic changes to the roles of these guys, but, get more out of each of them and trying to, build that continuity forward. And then I think you've got the right fits in terms of how you supplemented that with Stfan Vox. I think fits phenomenally in what Illinois wants to do, fits that Quinton Wagler role really well. Now, is he going to be Quinton Wagler? I would doubt it. But in terms of what, like you said, fitting that archetype, having the skills that you want from that lead guard spot, and really throw Quinton Coleman in that too, because I think he's going to play that role a little bit as well. But we've seen it here over the last few years. Illinois has a type, and Illinois has a way that they want to build a roster, and it's very offensively oriented. It's skill, it's size, it's playmaking from a lot of different spots. It's having a lot of different matchup nightmare guys on the floor that you can pick at and, cause issues for other teams. Like there's a formula that they have kind of committed to now. And I think they, with the continuity and also the guys they brought in, they've molded around that. And I think you've got a team, again, that's probably going to have one of the best offenses in the country next year and is going to be really tough to deal with. And I think you kind of just plug last season's formula into this year. How can we even just take it to the next step and build off of that? I think that was really the plan. And I think from an execution standpoint, it went about as well as you could have hoped for.
Yeah, just kind of echo what you were saying. I think they've doubled down on what their approach was.
That's a good way to say it. Yep.
Like the retention, like last year they had a lot of continuity and experience. It was 4 guys, and they added some key freshmen to that and added Andrej Stojakovic, but they had a foundation of retention. They doubled down and prioritized that even more this year with the guys and the success that they had. They doubled down on positional size, right? This is your shortest guy, 6'4". Then you have 6'7", 6'7", 6'9", 7'1", 7'2", 6'6" with Jake Davis. They doubled down on that. And they continue to double down on this offensive system, as you talked about, matchup hunting and preferring offense over, guys who are defensive focused. You're not going to see, I think, Sincere Harris or Ty Rodgers type players on this roster very much moving forward. This is going to be offense first, skill first, because that is what gives them this really high floor. And then the continuity of the staff with, we'll talk about schematics, but Cam Crocker coming back for a second year, kind of figuring out what worked, especially with this personnel. It's similar personnel coming forward this year. I understand that, Kyle, because it worked. And it worked 3 years ago with Marcus Damask and Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins. It did not when you had all that turnover, the following year, but or the year prior. But even last year when they got to the NCAA tournament, lost in the round of 32, the idea was right. You were just really young. This roster has a lot more experience, continuity. It's going to be some of the best continuity and some of the most age on the team in the country. So that all makes sense to me.
No doubt. There's no reason to change what's worked. And Illinois has found a formula that's worked. And now you kind of had the validation last year of that formula getting to a Final Four. Now, yes, you want to win the big one. And I think that's the next step that you ask anybody in that program saying, hey, we don't want to just go back to the Final Four. We want to win the national title. And, I think, it's easy, to your point, earlier in the offseason to be like, let's create this fantasy basketball roster and let's try to, but I also think when you look at, there was clearly, especially when you isolate kind of the Blackwell situation, which was a guy that obviously Illinois was going after in the offseason, but then it didn't ultimately play out. Like, I do think that there was kind of a, I trying to figure out how to say this perfectly, but
there was a downside
at
actually bringing him in.
Yes. Right? And I think when you look at last season's Formula 2, one of the great things about it was the role identification, just how everything fit together and just how connected that team was, how much chemistry you had. And it just felt like you had the perfect amount of everything, guys in the perfect spots, especially in the NCAA tournament. And, when you bring back 5 guys from a Final Four team, there is a situation where you can kind of overdo it a little bit. Like, you can just infuse so much new and, so many different mouths to feed into that foundation you already have, where now you're disrupting that. And now maybe it is going to look different and it's not going to be. So I think they were very intentional about that too. Like, we've got a really solid core back, a really, really good core back. Now let's just find the right fits. Let's find the guys that can do the things we need them to do. Obviously, the backcourt was a big focus, but I think as you looked at that, they didn't want to disrupt a lot from what that core is going to bring back. I think you just wanted to supplement it. Yes, you needed a big-time guard. They got it. But then I think there was a situation where you can almost infuse too much into that, and that was something that towards the end of the offseason, Illinois kind of realized, like, hey, we kind of have the group that I think fits perfectly right now. The roles are clear. Let's not mess with that. Let's just keep that same formula.
Yeah, and they invested heavily in it. Like, there was not a lot of discounts financially here, so adding another player like John Blackwell would have been very expensive as well. But I agree. Like, there's some disruption that could happen. The ceiling certainly would have raised if you had John Blackwell. Now that assumes everybody else would have been on board with that, and I'm not sure that would have been the case. But does your floor drop potentially because there's that disruption? I think that's possible as well. And as it stands, I think you have a top 5 roster as it is, especially with the front court that you have. All right, let's talk about some of those returners. We know how good Tomislav Ivicic is. We know how good David Mirkovic is, but he's just going to be a sophomore next year. Andrej Stojakovic turned into a 2-way player last year. Zvonimir Ivicic, an elite role player. Jake Davis, we know what he is. Which of those returners do you think can take the biggest leap next year as a player?
I think for me, it still has to be David Mirkovic, because we saw last year how much ability he has and just how much diversity there is to his game. Like, I think Illinois really only started to tap into all the different ways that they can use him and all the different things that he can do. And I think he was pretty consistent last year, but I think there is a world where we start to see more of the, the 2010 type of games and some of the bigger games from him. And, I don't necessarily know if this team needs him to take a humongous statistical leap, but I just think when you look at all the things he can do, especially, his ball skills, his ability to make plays with the ball in his hands. And I'm curious to see, and I'll get to that a little bit later too, but, you know, yes, I think Stfan Vox is going to have the ball in his hands and be this team's lead guard. Yes, I think Quinton Coleman will have it some, but I also think David Mirkovic is going to have it a lot. And I think there's a point where I could easily see in this season this really becoming kind of David Mirkovic's team, and a lot running through him, and him really being the guy that drives everything offensively for this team. And when you look at the rest of the returners, I don't know if they necessarily have that type of ceiling that David has. Like, I think Andre can take a humongous leap, but I don't necessarily think, it's going to look a way where like the ball's in his hands all the time and the numbers go out of this world. I think for David, that could be the case, because I just think there's so much room for improvement still for him. I think there's so much more he could do with the ball in his hands. I think he can get more efficient. I think he can diversify his, offensive game as a scorer even more. I think you only started to see some of the remnants of that last year. And obviously a guy that can shoot it like him, and a guy that you can put in so much action. Like, I think there's a big leap that could come with a second year. David Mirkovic, who's still only 20 years old and still was only in his first year of college basketball last year and was that impactful. Now you take that, and I think his role will increase a little bit. I think his usage could increase a little bit. And I think just as he continues to improve all these different aspects, as Illinois finds creative ways to use him, I think there could be a humongous jump there potentially for him.
I love that answer, especially because you dive into his numbers a little bit. The efficiency wasn't great against top 50 teams, right? 51% from 2 against top 50 teams, 33% from 3. I would not be surprised if there's a little bit of 3-point regression for David Mirkovic after shooting 37.5%. But if he improves that 2-point field goal percentage, and a lot of it at the rim against really good teams, and there's so much size in the Big Ten, that could always be difficult for him, but improving that a little bit, and then kind of that mid-range short jumper game where I think he can improve a little bit with his balance and strength, continuing to improve. He's going to have to play more minutes, so his conditioning is going to be really, really important. But you know what he brings. But I agree with you, Kyle. I like that answer because I do think there's another level of efficiency he can get to. There's a kind of desire to go Zvonimir, because the talent is unreal with him. Just if he improves as a shooter, just becomes better with his decision making. But I think his role is what it is. I just don't know if there's a huge uptick in production there. I think it's Andre because of consistency. If you get the consistent Andre we saw in March for an entire season, that's one of the best players in the Big Ten. It's one of the best two-way players in the Big Ten. And I agree with you. The ball's not going to run through him a lot. He's kind of like a secondary playmaker, which is an unbelievable thing for Illinois to have, because that guy could score 20-something on other teams that are worse. But if he just improves a little bit as a three-point shooter and just has that locked in defensively, rebounding all season long, it's one of the best two-way players, one of the best players in the Big Ten. So, well, we don't think of I don't think he's going to take a leap to 20 points a game or anything like that. I do think he can get 16 just because there's going to be more usage, and then he could be one of the better defenders and continue to improve as a rebounder. So I still think he's got another leap in him, which is why I think it makes so much sense for him to return. I think he's got the chance to be the highest drafted player on this team next year. There might be another newcomer who I think can push him for that, but I think this guy can be a top 40 NBA draft pick.
There's no reason he can't be. He's got, from a physical standpoint, talent wise, like he has everything you want with his size. Obviously, I just think his ability to get downhill, get to the rim, finish. That's watching just that. Taking away everything else in his game, but just watching him get a matchup, attack it, get to the rim, finish, like that was an NBA player. And last year for Illinois, like that is an NBA skill set. That's something that will translate. Just refining the other things and being a better shooter, proving that you can make the right play. When a defense does collapse on you, when a team does overhelp on you, can you make the right read? Can you make others better? Can you take advantage of all the gravity that you create with your downhill ability. Like those are all the things. And then defensively, I think is for Illinois specifically, like that's what I think they need the most from him, the biggest leap. And he was a good defender last year, but I do think there was some inconsistency there too. To get a elite defensive player out of him would be, I think, as big of a development as this entire roster could have. And I think that's where you could see that. But the reason I didn't say Andre is just because I do wonder from a statistical output standpoint, like what does that look like? Because I don't necessarily think the best version of Illinois next year is Andre going from 13.5 a game to 18 a game.
Correct.
Like I don't think that's the best version of Illinois, nor do I think that's necessarily what Illinois is going to ask of him. I just, to your point, the consistency in his role and kind of plugging the NCAA tournament version of him into next year for 35 games. If you get that, that's a big leap. So I think that could fit this answer still, but it maybe isn't like the flashiest thing ever.
Yeah, like we saw 20 plus point games from him this year, like 8 or something like that. Like he could do that every night. He doesn't need to on this team. So I think his points can upgrade with his efficiency continuing, but I don't think it needs to be a huge leap on the team with everything he's got around him. All right, Stfan Vox, the transfer edition for Illinois, number 15 in the rankings for 24/7 Sports among transfers. So Kyle, is he underrated as a transfer, properly rated, or overrated?
I think he's underrated. I do. And I'm falling in love with his game the more that I watch him. And I think you also have to, the transfer rankings can be tricky sometimes. And I don't envy anybody who has to do them. Like I know Isaac Trotter contributes to them. Like it's a tough thing to do because there's so many factors that you have to consider. And when you're just doing a straight ranking, like you're looking at the player you're evaluating, it's not really taking into consideration like what it's going to look like the next year, the context of not only who this player was, but what they can be at their new place. And that's where I think when you look at the Stfan Vox Illinois fit compared to some of these other guys, I think when you do a postseason transfer ranking next year, I think he's going to end up being in the top 10. And I just think when you think about the role that he's going to play and his skill set married with the talent that Illinois has around him and the system that Illinois has around him, I think you're going to get a really good player because you watch him. And I know that he hasn't necessarily been billed as like a true point guard, but he has lead guard skills. And you can tell watching a guy when they're on the ball, when they're playing in ball screens, when they're making decisions, like I think you can kind of tell for the combo guard types, like which guys have the natural ability to do it and which guys are kind of just doing it and aren't really comfortable doing it. He has natural lead guard skills. He has natural feel. He has natural processing ability. He has the ability to be really successful as a playmaker to pair with a guy who is as talented a shooter as there is in the portal, just with the difficulty of shot, the way he can create his own, the way he can shoot it off the bounce. He'll get plenty of those at Illinois. If Illinois does use him off the ball some, he's a guy who was a really good catch and shoot shooter last year. You space him out, I think he can get some really clean looks, more clean ones than he got at Providence. And I just think Illinois can help maximize all these different other areas of his game. I think Illinois, with the way that they play, can make him a serviceable defensive player. I think we talk about the jumps that he can make, 2-point percentage, rim rate, a lot, getting him downhill more, giving him more space to operate in the paint, getting him to the free throw line more. Like I think all those little incremental areas he can improve just based on playing with this front court, playing in the system. So I think by the end of the season, 15 is going to look low. And I think this is an NBA player, whether it's next year, the year after, 6'7" with those ball skills, with that shooting ability, will play in the NBA someday. And I think if he has the year he's capable of, that could be next year.
Yeah, like I agree with you. It's really hard to rank these players when you don't know where they're going, right? Because that has such an impact. It's like with the NFL draft. Ty Simpson going to the Rams, I feel a lot better about that than anywhere else. If he went to somewhere else, I'd be concerned. Or if Stfan Vox, say he goes to Kentucky or Auburn or – a place that just has some more questions about what they run, like North Carolina, maybe like going to Illinois is the perfect situation for him. Like the perfect offense, the perfect incubator for him to get the most out of him. So I think you'd probably rank the fit higher than where he is in the ranking. So he might be properly rated as like a prospect, but I think you're right. He's going to be underrated when we look back on this season just because of the fit of what he does for Illinois. And I think he'd be an NBA draft pick next year. If all goes well and with the fit that he has at Illinois and the class that is next year, I think this guy could be an NBA draft pick after one season at Illinois.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. If he has the year that he's capable of having, he cuts out some of the inefficiencies, don't think anyone's expecting him to become a lockdown defender, but you cut out some of the really bad stuff that was on that defensive tape last year, which I think that's kind of the goal here at Illinois. Like it was such a terrible situation at Providence last year, terrible defensive team, coaching staff that's no longer there. Like I think you get him to a point where you can kind of see a vision there just with his sheer size of like, okay, this can be a serviceable guy on that end, and then just accentuate all the offensive skills, which he already has NBA offensive skills. Like it's very rare, and that's why hearing the Luka Doncic name thrown out is like, whoa, let's not go there. But it's the archetype of player with that size and that shot making ability. It's so rare to find, and if you have that, you are going to be an NBA prospect. Now you just have to figure out how to use it all and how to be efficient with it all and how to maximize it all. And I think Illinois can help him do that. So I don't think there's any reason, if he plays that role well and has the year that I think he could have at Illinois and is this team's lead guard for most of the year, he will be on NBA radars. And I think there's no reason that a guy with that size, with that ability, wouldn't be a first round type of guy in next year's class. I think that's in the realm of possibility for him without question.
All right, they had to add another guard because they lost a lot in that backcourt. Quinton Coleman, now a composite 5-star prep prospect. Obviously, some high expectations for freshman guards now at Illinois. Keaton Walker sets a high bar. Kasper Sakashonis and Will Riley did as well. What are your expectations for Quinton Coleman as a freshman at Illinois?
It's hard to say. I think the beauty of the way that this roster has been put together is that there are going to be expectations on Quinton Coleman, and pretty high ones. And I think Illinois has those, and he has those for himself, but you're not asking him, you're not forcing him to come in and be a star next year and I think you're leaving yourself room to let him come along a little bit and grow into his own. And that's why I think, hearing some people be like, well, I can't believe Illinois is going all in on freshmen again. It's like, well, the freshmen in this rotation are like 5, 8, 9, 11, and 12 in the rotation. Like that's not, yes, you're relying on Quinton Coleman and you're making a bet on Quinton Coleman being an impact Big Ten player.
Which a top 35 prospect, I think we can count on that most of the time.
Yes. And I certainly, he's got all the ability to be that, but I think my expectation for him would not be Keaton Wagler level. It would be more, I'm trying to find the right fit from a role standpoint, but I think the 5th best player on this team, a guy who's a complementary piece, a guy who definitely he'll have the ball in his hand some. I think he'll have some big games, but I think it's a guy that, almost Trey McKinney for Michigan last year in a way, but I think maybe it could look a little bit bigger from a role standpoint, just because I think he's going to start and I think he's going to get a little bit more opportunity than on that loaded Michigan team, but just be a complementary piece who makes some shots, who can do some things with the ball. I think defensively, that's one that I'm going to be monitoring too, because I think that's a big key. Can Quinton Coleman be a good defensive player? I think Illinois is kind of betting on that too. I think he's capable of being that. I just think he does a lot of things well, but I don't think he necessarily is being asked to come in and do a ton. I think you can let him kind of work his way into things while also still being a guy who's an impactful player. So I don't have a super clear answer to that, but I just...
Can I give you a few? Potential comps?
Sure.
One of the names somebody mentioned to me when I was like, who's he play like as a prep prospect? And they said, as a prep prospect, I'm not saying this guy's going to be an All-American by his second year, but LeBaron Philon was somebody that got a comp. His freshman year at Alabama, 10.5 points, 3.5 assists, 3.5 turnovers, 1.4 steals, shot 45% from the field, 32% from three. I don't know if he's going to have that many assists. I don't know if it's going to be 10 points, whether it's 8 or 12, whatever it is. The other guy I thought of kind of is DJ Richardson. at Illinois, averaged
Yeah.
10.5 points, 2.7 rebounds, 2.1 assists, about a steal a game. I think that's the kind of role you're looking at. So neither of those comps are perfect, right? But like around that kind of impact is a kind of starter level player, which Illinois is usually going to be double-digit points around there. He's going to have the ball in his hand, so he's going to create for his teammates, going to off-ball shoot a lot, and I do expect this kid to rebound. He's got some toughness and physicality to him, so I do expect him to kind of continue the KJ Wagler line of freshman guards who aren't afraid to stick their nose in and rebound.
And I think that's the great part about him is he does so many different things well, and I think you can tap into all those things without necessarily asking him to, carry a huge load. I think he can tap into the rebounding, defensive upside, his shooting ability, his ability to create for himself, his ability to create for others. Like he does so many different things well, and I think you can use all of those different things without having to rely on any of them especially heavily, and you can just let him develop all those things. And then you're hoping for, hey, year 2, maybe this becomes a situation, especially if Stfan Vox elevates himself into an NBA draft prospect, like then you're starting to supersize that role a little bit and put the ball in his hands more. But I just think I do really like the fit with him and Vox in the backcourt too. I think that's important because I think both those guys can play on the ball. I think both those guys can play off the ball. I think when one of those guys is off the floor, I think you can put the ball in the other one's hands and feel comfortable with it. And I think both those guys just are such talented offensive players that don't necessarily have to touch the ball all the time to be successful. And I think that's important when you're fitting kind of 2 combo guards together in a backcourt a little bit, is having that blend. So I think the fit is going to be really good. And I think Quinton Coleman is a really, really talented player, but Illinois has made it a situation where, yes, they're relying on him, but they're not asking the world of him either. And I think that's kind of the perfect place to be, because if he does come in and has a humongous, like we even think about last year, Keaton Wagler early in the year basically was standing in the corner for most of November. And then all of a sudden you realize like, hey, we could do a little bit more. And I think you could see that progression for Quinton, not to that level, but as the season goes on, you could kind of tap into more and more with him as you kind of bring him along.
All right. Underrated piece of this roster, Kyle, who you got?
There's a couple good answers here. I think I'm going to go with Z, because to your earlier point, like the talent is unbelievable. This is a guy who was 4th in the country in block rate last year and is coming off your bench, and a guy that if he was in the transfer portal would probably get a starting job and a couple $1 million from half of high major basketball to be their starting center, especially with the scarcity of big men. Illinois has that guy as their 6th or 7th man off the bench. And I also just think he gives you such a different element in that front court than what Tommy and David give you. Like he's just so different than those guys, while still maintaining what you want to do and giving you the 5-out spacing and giving you the skill. But you have a supreme athlete, a guy who can play above the rim, a guy who is a lob threat, a guy who is a really impactful defensively as a rim protector and a shot blocker. And he's not a 3 for 31 3-point shooter like he closed last year as. That's just not who he is. Now he'll have to shoot it better. I think he's part of that, like shot selection and some of that is part of that he has to own, but he's not that bad of a 3-point shooter. He's not a 28% 3-point shooter like he was last year too. So I think you just get back to what he was his first 2 years from a shooting standpoint and continue to just build some more consistency with him in that role and be able to have that guy who gives you such a different look and has so much natural talent and so much length and size and athleticism that's so different than what your starting front court is. When you look at this team and, everybody wants to focus on the starting lineup and what that looks like, but then you realize that you have that guy off your bench. Yeah. I think that's going underrated in some of this, because Zvonimir Ivicic could start for a lot of college basketball teams and the luxury that Illinois has with him. And I still think the improvements that he can make just within that role are so big that I think he could fly under the radar a little bit of what his impact could be.
I mean, it's kind of a throwaway. Like, yeah, everyone knows Jake Davis, glue guy, connective piece. The production's a little lower, so I think everybody appreciates what he does. I think it might be the other Ivicic twin. I mean, Tomislav Ivicic would have been a top 12 transfer on the market if he decided to go there. This is a guy that could have been drafted if he decided to go in the NBA draft. And I get it. It's David Mirkovic, star, could be a superstar this year. Stfan Vox could be an NBA draft prospect. You get a 5-star composite player coming in. Andrei Stojakovic could be one of the best two-way guys. But does anybody impact the way Illinois plays more than Tomislav Ivicic? I'm not sure, because the ability to stretch the floor, he struggled shooting last year until the NCAA tournament, was pretty dang good. And then the low post game improved greatly. He's a pretty good rebounder. I think you saw that show up in the NCAA tournament as well. And while he's limited defensively, he does make an impact there. So just everything they do is kind of based around this center position being able to have the skill set that Tommy has. So I think everybody understands that, but it's worth kind of reiterating with all these other exciting pieces. Like, Tommy's just the foundation of a lot of things they do.
I love that answer, because I think he has started to become, I think you could say, underrated. I think maybe underappreciated is the better term. And I think there was plenty of reason, and we talked about it and covered it, and especially, February, and as you got towards the later part of the regular season, like, he wasn't playing well.
And that was part of the big reason Illinois wasn't playing well.
Right. And so I'm not trying to say that, people were wrong for, criticizing him or just questioning some of his play at some point last year. But I do think there reached a point where he was becoming underappreciated, because while he didn't necessarily have the statistical season or the efficient season from three that he had his first year, like, to your point, there's so much about Tomislav's value that can't be shown in his stat line at the end of a game. Like, his skill set is the foundation of what allows Illinois to have an offense as good as they have, and this play the way they want to play and do the things they want to do. Like, having a big with his skill set at his size, and this is still a guy that, as we got, especially in the NCAA tournament, like, he showed some real toughness too. Like, that's something that maybe hasn't been as consistent as you wanted, but dude's pretty tough. Like, especially in the biggest games, like, he showed up, he was tough. He rebounded the heck out of the ball, showed some physicality to him. Like, I think now, hopefully you can get a fully healthy offseason from him with no illness, with no injury. You let him actually have the full summer and fall. But then now a second year with the same exact front court, and just a realization of what that role is and playing it well. I think it can really help him, because I think a lot of the inconsistency last year for him too was tied to what David Mirkovic was doing and trying to figure out how to play with him. And now you have that understanding more. So I love that answer. I think Tommy has become a little bit underappreciated and is a huge piece of next year. I think even just talking about leaps, like, I think you could see a pretty decent leap from Tommy from last year, just because I think he's capable of being better than he was last year for large stretches of the year. So I think that's a great answer.
All right, just a few more with you, Kyle. Biggest concern about this roster and this team right now?
It has to be on the defensive end. I know that's the easy answer, but you look at this team, and look, for most of last year, that was a big concern. And even entering the NCAA tournament, that was a concern. Now, Illinois used their defense to get to a Final Four last year, which was not something that we necessarily saw coming. It's a credit to them. I think it proved that the formula that they have on that end of the floor is capable of being successful. But I think from a personnel standpoint, like, even looking on last year's roster, you're losing your best defensive player in Kylan Boswell, the guy that you put on the opposing team's best guard most of the time. You hope that Andre can take over that, but you're also losing Benham Rickhouse, who became really valuable on the defensive end. Now you don't really have a guy like that who could handle the assignments that he could. And I'm not saying that he was an elite defensive player, but his value of his versatility and his ability to what he grew into on that end, I think that's a big loss. And even Keaton Wagler, like, we talk about putting Stfan Vox in the Keaton Wagler role. It's a big defensive downgrade right now. Now, hopefully you can improve that, but Quinton Wagler was pretty underrated on what he was able to do defensively last year. So just from a straight personnel standpoint, like, this is a worse defensive roster on paper than last year for a team that had defensive question marks for a lot of the season. Ultimately, we're able to find a formula that worked. And I still think like just with the size Illinois has and, the way that they want to play defensively, there is a pretty high floor there. And I think that they kind of figured out what that looked like in the NCAA tournament last year of just kind of weaponizing that size and length and forcing teams to shoot over that. But you still got to have the individual improvement on that end of the floor from guys. And like you look across the Big Ten too, you look at Jeremy Fears and some of these guards you're going to play. Like, do you have a guy who can slow down those
Who are your proven plus defenders? Andrei Stojakovic and Zvonimir?
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
So 2 of 8 in your rotation.
That's where you're really counting on Quinton Coleman. Right. And you're counting on continuity and Cam Crocker, to be honest with you. The on-ball defense is my biggest concern. Andre can do one of it, but what about a team that's got 2 of them like Wisconsin did last year? Michigan's going to be pretty dang good this year. So one of them's on McKinney, who's on Cadeau, right? Like that's the biggest question for this team for me is that on-ball defense. Is it still going to tear you up this year? How do you improve on that? So certainly that's one of my biggest concerns. Can I say my biggest concern is how you replace a legendary player?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Keaton Wagler is one of the best players to ever wear an Illinois uniform and had one of the best seasons in Illinois history and was pretty awesome in the NCAA tournament. Like, you have to replace that guy. And while I am excited about Stfan Vox and Quinton Coleman, like, I just respect Keaton Wagler that much to be like, yeah, you need these other guys to step up their game a lot, these returners, because Keaton Wagler did a lot of the things that made your team so special. And he's just a special talent. So I don't want to overlook that. You're losing a guy who go 5, 6, or 7 in the NBA draft, and that's not easy to replace.
It was a consensus All-American. Like, yeah, he was one of the best players in college basketball. And for as much as we talk about the continuity and the retention, you're not retaining your top player. And so, yes, that is a big hole that you have to fill. And I think Illinois has the talent to fill it, but I don't think it's going to be one guy. And I think it's going to be more so the incremental improvements from everybody to, if each guy can elevate a little bit, you can get the most out of Vox, you can get the most out of Coleman, meld those guys together in a way that helps you make up for that loss. That's, I think, the formula, but that still has to happen. And that's going to be tough. And, you still are missing that guy right now, and we'll see who can grow into that. But, he was your late game killer too, the guy you put the ball in his hands and had full trust in the biggest moments to make plays for you. Like, now you got to figure out who that is. That's difficult. That might not happen right away. So yes, I think that's a great call out, because that's the one thing that does get overlooked more than anything is that, yes, Illinois, the sum of the parts for Illinois last year was great, but also you had a superstar player, top 10 NBA draft pick player, and that guy's not walking through those doors next year. So how do you manage without that is going to be big storyline in the offseason. You hope that you can do it with the additions and the improvement from the guys you bring back.
I want to bring up the depth conversation because the way you built your roster is most of the money has to go to the top 7, top 8. Right. And that certainly is the case for Illinois, which is why they went prep heavy. It's cheaper to do that and fill out your roster that way. And to go in and find an 8th or 9th player on a team, it ain't cheap. It ain't cheap to do it in the transfer portal. So they're relying on the freshmen. I think they're going to do that for the foreseeable future here, Kyle. But Ben Humrickhouse was a key piece, a connective piece last year. Now, Lucas Murillo definitely has more offensive skill set. Maybe not the shooting of Ben Humrickhouse right away, though he has improved, but he can play make, big guard, positional versatility, defensive versatility as well. If you have an injury, yeah, you got some questions about your depth, but I think that's true of most teams now. And you feel like Ethan Brown or maybe Xavier Zenz could fill in. Jason Jackson can fill in some rotational minutes here. So yeah, I have some depth concerns if they have to go to the 9th or 10th guy, but it takes an injury usually to do that. And even when an injury happens, we saw last year, the 8-man rotation usually just goes to a 7-man rotation.
Right. And Brad Underwood's been a guy who's mainly played 8 for the most part, especially on these successful teams. And I think you have an 8 that you feel like is a top 5 8-man rotation in the country right now. You get beyond that, and yes, it's a lot of inexperience, and guys that, I think you would prefer to not have to play very much. Now, I think there will be opportunities. Like, I think Ethan Brown is capable of playing a role on this team, and I think Illinois believes that. But you're hoping that that's more of almost the Brandon Lee type of role from last year, maybe a little bit more than that, where he gets a little bit more opportunity. But that's the guy that, yes, you have him, but you don't necessarily aren't relying on him for much. When you get past the 8, yes, I think it's fair to be like, okay, what happens if we do have to play 9, 10, and 11? Because there's just not a lot of known there. But I think the scenarios where that really becomes a deciding factor of your season are very small. Like, I don't think there's a lot of those. And so I don't have that very high on my list of concerns. It is one, and I think it's a valid one, but I don't think the way that Illinois has operated, the way that they've played their rotations, and the fact that I do think that those guys, like for 5 minutes, like I think Ethan Brown, Xavier Zenz, Jason Jackstis, if you have major foul trouble in your front court, this is a guy, yes, he's got to get healthy, and obviously he's coming back from a very scary health situation that we'll have to monitor. If he is healthy, like this is a guy who can come in, defend and rebound for 4 minutes for you. Like, I think that's not going to change your season, having to rely on that type of thing. So I'm not all that worried about it. I focus more on the guys that I know are going to play, but I think that when you go down the list of some question marks you have, that's definitely a valid one.
All right. Last one I got for you, Kyle. Schematic adjustments. What kind of schematic adjustments with this roster does Illinois need to tweak, change from last year?
To be honest, not much. Like, I wouldn't change much. I think that's the beauty of the continuity and, kind of what you want with bringing as much back as you are, and then, kind of fitting guys in that fit your system, which I think Quinton and Stfan and even Lucas are. Like, I don't think you want to change much. I think you just want to use that formula that you used, especially offensively last year. Like, there's nothing much to tweak. Now, I think getting into some of the nuances of it all from an individual standpoint, I am interested in some of the different ways that they can use the personnel on the roster, especially offensively. Like, I think David Mirkovic, when you dream of some of the different things that you can do with him, like you even heard him talk about at Coaches versus Cancer, like, I want to improve my ball screen decision-making. Like, can you tap into that a little bit more and, do some more inverted ball screen stuff, or maybe you have David Mirkovic be your initiator and you have one of those guards set the screen, especially against teams who maybe are sending 2 to the ball. Now you're playing, advantage basketball with a guard, or you're bringing a 4-man who's maybe not as mobile or quick. You're putting him in ball screen action because you have a David Mirkovic who can do that. Like, maybe some high-low stuff with those bigs, which we saw at times last year. Maybe you get creative with those guards and how you use Stfan Vox. I think there's some nuances there from a usage standpoint that you can kind of get into. But I think structure-wise, like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that Illinois has always done. It's a lot of ball screens. It's advantage creation. It's matchup hunting. It's, space in the floor. It's, putting pressure on the rim, taking a lot of threes. Like, all those things are going to be the same. Defensively, I don't think you want to change much, because I think the formula that you used in the NCAA tournament last year is the formula that you have to use with this personnel, because what it does is it kind of weaponizes your size and your length, and it takes the onus off more of having a bunch of disruptors, a bunch of guys that you're leaving on islands, a bunch of guys that, you don't have the elite defenders on this team. So it's got to be more of a team approach of, hey, we're going to shut off the rim. We're going to force teams to shoot over our size. So, there's nuances in both ways that I think you can talk about, but I think from a general standpoint, you don't really want to change that much, because I think that's the beauty of having all these guys is now they're in their second year, they're coming back, they're more comfortable with what you're doing. Now you're just accentuating that with everybody. So that's kind of how I see it.
I had 2 things written down. You mentioned one of them, playing more through Merck, what that looks like, and some of the things they could do off of that. The other one was 2 Ivisic lineups, using them more, because I think you're going to have to. With Ben Humrickhouse gone and Lucas Murillo not a 4, right? You can kind of just have positional versatility with your 2 through 4 with him on the court. But playing the Ivisic lineups a little bit more will be interesting because I do think they're going to have them more. How do you defend? Is it more zone? What do you do there? So like that'll be interesting to me, but these are tweaks, right? Like the system and the scheme, I think are, what they're going to be.
Yeah, and just getting more comfortable with some of the change-ups you throw in there defensively, like, getting better with that zone or just in a second year. Like, I think sometimes I think it was an effective change-up at times for Illinois last year, and they especially like to use it on baseline, sideline, out of bounds. But, now just getting guys more comfortable executing that a little bit better. We saw against Houston in the NCAA tournament, Illinois did a lot of high hedging with Merck, with the Ivisiches, like just getting more comfortable with that and being able to have more confidence in some of those little tweaks that you make, which aren't things that you're necessarily going to make your base coverages or the things you do all the time. But, I think just building off of some of those little things within certain matchups and certain games that Cam Crocker can use defensively, same thing offensively too, with just the usage of guys. I think that's where you want to put your focus on more than anything large scale.
All right, last thing I got for you, Kyle, and this was fun. I know it was a little bit longer, but I think people enjoy it. CBS Sports, Gary Parrish has Illinois number 4 on his 25-1 right now, which he updates pretty much every other day. He's got Florida at 1, Duke at 2, Michigan 3, Illinois 4, UConn 5, Michigan State 6. Looking down in the Big Ten, he's got USC at 14, certainly a talented roster. Purdue at 19, Indiana, big offseason for them at 20, Nebraska 24, Ohio State 25, UCLA 26. Where would you have them? I would nationally and in the Big Ten.
I think that's a pretty perfect spot to me. I don't have much complaints with that. I think to me, 5 is kind of the floor to where I see Illinois right now nationally. Like if you want to put UConn over them because they beat them last year and they're bringing a lot back, fair. I think I don't have much gripe with Michigan. Now I will say it doesn't seem like right now that Morez Johnson will be back, which I think would have elevated them even more. But I think with their offseason
he's a top 20 draft pick. I don't know why an NBA team wouldn't want to take him around the 15-20 range.
Agreed. But I still think with what they were able to do, and we'll see. I know they're trying to get Juke Harris too right now. Like if they get him, yes, I think there's no question about it. But I think, them, Duke, Florida, UConn, Illinois. To me, that's the top 5. I think you can play around with the order like you want to. I think if you are putting Illinois below the Michigan States, Arkansas, Texases of the world, that's where I'd start to have a problem. But I think 4 is kind of the right spot. And I think in the Big Ten, it's Michigan and Illinois right now for me. And I think Michigan State's in that mix somewhere, especially assuming that you get Jeremy Fears back. But I just think the ceiling is so much higher for teams like Michigan and Illinois than that team. So I think that's just about right. And that's a pretty exciting place to be.
I'd be a little higher in UCLA than he is. I would have loved UCLA with John Blackwell. But I agree. I think if you want to put UConn because Dan Hurley, I wouldn't disagree with that. But top 5 and number 2 probably in the Big Ten for me is where I'd have them. And I think Illinois is on Michigan's level, especially with Mara, man. He's tough to replace. And Morez is tough to replace as well. If Morez comes back, Michigan probably be my number 1 in the country. Estrella is a really good player. I like him. They had Theom, really good prospect. Like they keep reloading. So I don't mind Michigan being above Illinois, but I think Illinois and Michigan are the clear top tier.
I do think you're not replacing Mara, but in terms of going out and trying to get as close of a replacement as you can get, I think Mustafa Theom or Cham or however you say it is about as good as you could have done. Like it's pretty perfect. I think that's a perfect fit there. That's a great get for them. The one team I'm so fascinated about heading into next year is USC, because if you look at that roster, I don't think from a raw talent standpoint, and you look across the country, there might not be a more talented roster in the country than that USC team, who has like 6 5-star prospects on that team. They're bringing in one of the best high school classes in the country, might be ranked number 1. I'm not sure with Christian Collins and Darius and Adonis Ratliff. And then you're bringing back Elijah Arenas. You get Rodney Rice back. Who else did they get back? Jacob Kofi, I think, is coming back for them. Like that roster has a ton of basketball ability. How does it actually play out on the basketball court? I think will be fascinating because that team could be like Big Ten title competitive or on the bubble, which maybe it's not the bubble anymore with 76, but like, 10 seed type of team. Like I that's the wild card team to me in the Big Ten, because their offseason was phenomenal. But I have questions about, compared to Michigan and Illinois, like how does it actually look on a basketball court playing together?
This is foolhardy. I should never even allow myself to think this, Kyle. Purdue. I got questions. Like the opposite of USC. It's like, listen, retention's great. Your coach is awesome. The basketball is going to fit with each other. Is there enough talent there? Like CJ Cox, Daniel Jacobson, Omer Meyer, Harris, Benter. You got all that continuity coming back. That's what he's built. They have a good freshman class coming in with Luke Ertl is expected to be really good. Caden Pierce they add as a transfer. So they'll be good to solid, right? I just question their upside. Like, what is the upside for Purdue? But then I remember Matt Painter is their coach, and I go, you can't question them too much. But I got some questions.
They're going to be a good team. Like I have no questions about that. I have a lot of questions about what their ceiling looks like, and I just, even if I'm a fan of that program, and look, it's a formula that's worked for them, and I think that there is, like, him and Tom Izzo have been kind of the ones that have been like, hey, we're still going to do it the old school way. We're going to retain, we're going to develop. We do not want to go out and have to add 5 transfers to any roster. It's just not how we're going to operate. It's fine, and both those teams have won a ton of Big Ten games, even in the transfer portal era. But I do think both those programs limit their ceilings a little bit. Like I don't know. Now, when you have Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, like, yes, I think those teams had Final Four ceilings. I don't know if Purdue has that anymore, because you can post the, we're all back graphic with 10 different guys on it. How many of those guys are like true difference making players? I think it was like 3 maybe, so, and that's assuming some real development from like a Daniel Jacobson and CJ Cox and Omer Meyer. So yeah, that'll be fascinating. I wouldn't put it past Matt Painter from developing those guys and putting a team that all of a sudden you look up and they go 15-5 in the Big Ten and are right in that mix. But from a roster standpoint, I even just, if I was a Purdue fan, I'd be like, well, I like the idea of retention. I also would like the idea of like 1 or 2 pieces to supplement the retention from the external ranks, just because I think those are the ones that could have raised the ceiling a little bit.
Kyle Tausk, you're the goods, man. We got Mike Small on a golf coach coming up next. But Kyle, appreciate the time as always, man.
Absolutely.
All right, it's that time of year where, boy, we got busy schedules. Running the kids around. My daughter's in softball, so don't have a lot of time to think about what to cook or to actually do the cooking. And that's where Factor comes in handy. They have fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the shopping or the cooking. Quality functional ingredients in these Factor meals, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. They're meals that fit your goals and schedule. Healthier eating, calorie management, or more protein. They have a wide variety, 100 rotating weekly meals. The options include high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. Plus, the new Muscle Pro collection supports strength and recovery. Factor meals, always fresh, never frozen, ready in about 2 minutes, no prep, no stress. Head to factormeals.com/Illini50off and use code Illini50off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor.